I'm Cory Smith, the senior staff writer at the Daily News in Greenville, Michigan. I am sitting in today on the Discover Montcalm podcast. Stay tuned for my story.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is brought to you by WGLM 106.3 FM, Be More Media, Busy Bees Embroidery and Vinyl Signs, West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, and DW Video. Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we are going to look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Discover Montcalm podcast. My name's Dwayne. I'm the host and producer. You can catch all of our episodes at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. You can grab the RSS feed, put it into your favorite podcast browser, and you can get notifications every time we put one out. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And today, I've got Cory Smith here in the studio. Welcome, Cory.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's interesting. Our paths have crossed a few times. Mm-hmm. I think one of the first times I met you was at your sister's wedding.
Yep. My sister, you did the videography for my sister's wedding right at the First Congregational Church in Greenville.
Yeah. So, at that point, maybe, and then we connected a few other times, and I've been following your career, and it's pretty interesting. You're kind of, you get to see what you're doing on a daily basis.
Sure.
So let's go back in Cory's life.
Okay.
You're a Greenville resident. You grew up in Greenville. Mm-hmm. Take us back to your childhood. What was that like?
Sure. So to give a little perspective, I always say I'm kind of Greenville born and raised, technically speaking. I grew up in Kent County, in Oakfield Township, right on Lincoln Lake Road, just a few miles south of M57. So that's all part of the Greenville School District. So as a young kid growing up, you don't care about what county you're in or township. You don't even know what those details are. But you know.
Because school lines are different than township lines.
Right.
And even there, you're still part of the Greenville community.
Yep. And it was, my dad is a Greenville, 1972 Greenville High School graduate. Lived in the house that I grew up in since he was 4. So, him and my mother still live there today. That was home. Greenville, was home. And it still is today. But so childhood-wise, grew up there, went to Lincoln Heights Elementary School, Greenville Middle School, Greenville High School, was involved in athletics at the school. I wasn't great at any one particular thing when it came to that. I did a lot of that because it kept you close to your circle of friends. So I'd run track, I'd play soccer, and then I was also very heavily involved in the band program. Okay. So played trumpet, and that carried me on and beyond high school as well. So,
music's a great thing. I know that music's what's kind of kept me in school. I wasn't an athlete. I like to watch sports, but I wasn't one that participated. But band is what kept me in school. Mm-hmm. That was my go-to, and I'm still doing it today. Yeah. And I know you're still doing it today.
Yeah. I still play on occasion. Yeah. When asked.
Well, that and our time. Mm-hmm. Our time is one of the things. So, from your memories, you were growing up in what, the 90s? 80s, 90s?
Yeah. So, full disclosure, 1985 is when I was born. So, as far as childhood goes, it's early 90s. Yeah, for the most part. And I'm a 2004 Greenville High School graduate. So, my childhood kind of goes within that 20-year window there.
So, from your memories, what was Greenville like growing up?
Interesting, because when you're so much younger, the community can feel so much larger than maybe it really is. And so for me, especially growing up on a farmhouse out in rural Oakfield Township, Greenville was the city. It was, and I did, growing up, we went on lots of trips. My mother, originally from Norway and grew up in Connecticut. My grandparents resided in Connecticut. So we had many trips to the East Coast and elsewhere. So I was aware of bigger cities, but still Greenville still felt big growing up. And there are certain things that would stand out for you. Recreationally is really what impacts you as a kid. So for me, it was, playing, at first recreation soccer out on the youth fields, which today don't look anything like they used to. Everything has been transformed.
Everything changes.
Everything changes. It was going to JR's roller castle, especially in elementary school. All the schools would have, whether it was like every month or something, there'd be that school's night to go.
Right.
And, that was one way to socialize and rent skates. And, not now it's Hop Hog. It's a whole different, they tore it down, put in a whole new building. It's a restaurant now. So things have changed tremendously. But, the things I take away were just the recreational opportunities, and the schools are what really bring you in as a kid. You can't really get yourself in there until you have a license in your own car.
Right.
So you're reliant on what are your parents taking you to town for? It was also, I can recall shopping at the North Side Meijer, well before the current Meijer that's there now was constructed. Riding Sandy the pony, that kind of stuff. Going to the movies in Greenville. I mean, I don't know how relevant that is to kids today, but back in the 90s, that's huge, a way to hang out with friends.
I understand, because for me, I grew up in Morley a little before you, and Big Rapids was where we went.
Yeah.
And it was, the underground, the arcade, let's hang out, let's go to the movies, let's do all the things, and, times change. So at what point in your life did all of a sudden you start taking up photography? You started, where was young Cory in high school? What was your direction, and did it change?
It did. So just to throw that out there first. So in high school, I had no experience with photography whatsoever. It was right by the time I entered high school, darkroom photography was just about on its way out. The senior class at the time, when I was a freshman, was still a little bit involved in that, and it was in its transition into digital. But I had no interest hardly in it whatsoever. I was a band geek. I was actually when I graduated high school and went to Michigan State University, I went with a focus on mechanical engineering.
Okay.
And so and I went with the inclination to play trumpet in the Spartan marching band. Like, those are my big focuses. And photography, writing, my writing classes, my English classes in high school were the ones I was sleeping through. So, not to take anything away from the teachers, they were great. It just wasn't a subject.
It wasn't your interest.
No,
at the time.
not at all. I was focused on math. I was focused on my extracurriculars like band and athletics. And so then I go to Michigan State. And I'm thinking still, again, nothing about photography or anything like that. And that's when things started to change a bit. I struggled in some subjects related to engineering. You need to get through 4 levels of calculus, and I struggled to get through the first. So I swapped majors a couple times, and I can't remember the exact moment when it happened, but I kind of, at one point, had borrowed my dad's camera.
Okay.
And just started to kind of, take photos with it. And I just sort of had a little bit of a natural eye with it, like I did with the trumpet. When I picked up the trumpet in 6th grade, I was first chair the first week. Like, it was one of those things where I just happened to have a little bit of natural talent with it. The same thing applied with a camera. So from there, I still struggled. I was like, what do I do? I was a business major. I was bouncing around, didn't know what to do.
Which is, not to interrupt, but that's pretty typical.
It is, yeah.
Of, I guess you ask anybody their story.
Yep.
And are they doing what they started out to do? Because I know my path changed.
Yeah.
And, but I'm happy where it ended up.
Yeah.
So now you're finding out that you're a business major.
Yep.
You've played around with the camera a little bit. Take us from that point.
Sure. So long story short, it ends up I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do. I'm entering my junior year-ish. I needed to have a major declared for certain. The business college is saying, it's not looking like you're taking this too seriously as far as a career. So I meet with advisors, and then I actually speak with my mom, who says, you're also, I got really into like fantasy football and watching professional sports. And she says, what if you went into being a sports writer? And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to write. But at the time, my advisors look at my transcript, and the classes I was excelling in at MSU were my writing and English classes.
Okay. Things that you slept through in high school?
Which has surprised me, because it's almost like an interest in that kind of awakened in me somehow. And so I enrolled in the School of Journalism at Michigan State, the School of Communications, and pursued journalism. And from there, I fell in love with it. I took some photography courses in addition to that because I knew at the time the industry was changing for journalism in general. A lot of papers, especially the size of the Daily News in Greenville, the idea of a staff photographer, that position was disappearing.
Because you're out there taking pictures, you might as well write the story.
That's where it went. Everybody has a smartphone, so from management on down, they're saying, you've got the phone in your pocket, you're going to take the photos to go with your story. Now, so I knew that. So I took photo classes in addition to my written journalism classes to build that skill set up. A couple of videography classes as well, just to really try to balance myself out. And, upon finishing my schooling at Michigan State, I walked into a couple internships. I had one with Consumers Energy. It was a public relations internship, writing for their biweekly newsletter. I learned very quickly that I could make a really good living writing for a publication like that. But at the same time, being public relations, you have no real control over your content. It is going to be edited by whoever needs to edit it. It's going to be made to look the way it needs to look for the company. I completely understood that. But at the time, having just finished an ethics course at MSU, I was like, this isn't journalism. So it was a great learning experience.
Well, you got to try.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a fantastic opportunity and great internship. And then I ended up having a second internship with the Lansing State Journal as a kind of a part-time media mojo. I was primarily taking photo and video for them, and had a couple opportunities to write. In between there, I also did have an internship at the Daily News, too. I came back for a non-paid internship for a summer, so I'm working nights at Pizza Hut to pay for gas, and I'm working 40 hours a week at the paper, just, trying to build up a portfolio. So between... Oh, go ahead,
yeah. I guess my teaching hat just kind of came on at that point, and being part of the Montcalm Area Career Center, people that are listening, especially young people, you got to work hard. Nothing is given to you.
No.
And you used the term that is used a lot in my class, your portfolio.
Yes.
And you're going to have to do a lot of things, which at that time, you had to eat. You had bills to pay. You're coming up probably on college tuition.
It's getting close.
You're not tuition, but payback.
Yes.
Those loans are loans. They're not free money.
Correct.
But for those listening, don't give up on your dream. I don't care what age you are. Don't give up on your dream. No. I did not know that I'd be in a teaching position at this phase.
Yeah.
But all my experiences kind of led me to that. So back to your story.
Yeah, and when you talk about not giving up on your dream, I ran into that scenario. I had done that internship at the Daily News. It was 2007. I spent a whole summer working, and right on the cusp of Electrolux having left. And I don't know, I wrote maybe 45 stories that summer. And it was nice because I got thrown to the wolves almost immediately. The editor at the time, I thought there was going to be some hand-holding, some job shadowing. And that first week I was writing a story, given it was about the installation of a street light, nothing amazing. But within the next couple of days, weeks, I was writing about fatal accidents. I was, you name it, I was getting assigned some pretty serious stuff. And also being provided the opportunity to take photos as well. And so from then I move on. I start working at the Lansing State Journals, 2009, 2010, right around there, because I wrapped up at MSU in 2009 in the spring. It took 5 years, but part of that was because I took a semester off for that Consumers Energy internship. And so then I'm at the Lansing State Journal, and they keep me on after my internship. They said, we'd like to keep you, we can't give you a full-time position, but part-time, we'd love you to race out to scenes for breaking news, that kind of stuff. I was able to cover MSU football games and basketball games. It was wonderful. However, because that opportunity could never morph into a full-time position, I was working a job putting beer on the shelves at your local Walmart in Lansing to pay the bills in addition to that. And it was just, I couldn't dedicate enough of myself to one of the two jobs, and I was struggling in both areas. And eventually I made the decision, all right, I've got to head back home. My parents will let me reside for a bit and find a full-time job somewhere.
Your story is so close to mine.
Yeah.
Mine took me to Waterford,
the
Pontiac area.
Yeah.
Internship turned into a job.
Yeah.
And then through things, I was the last hired in, so a budget cut came, and but at the same time, it brought me back to Ferris, my instructor at the time. said, hey, come back here as a lab assistant.
Yeah.
And also work in the media, so I was out doing all different things, which is kind of where I fall in. But, when you're saying that, my parents said, yeah, we've got a room for you, but things are going to change a little bit.
Yeah.
With that in mind, as you make money, pay us a little rent.
Yep.
Which, looking back, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
That's not a bad thing. So, I'm like, okay, different decades, but similar stories.
Yep.
So you've now moved back to Greenville.
Yep. I'm putting out applications everywhere. I went for an in-person interview down at a newspaper in Goshen, Indiana. I had, I was preparing for interviews in Illinois, like anything, I was starting to get ready to prepare myself to move anywhere across the country. It wasn't something I really wanted to do, but at that point, this is 2010, 2011 now.
But you knew at that point, I can kind of sense that newspaper was where you wanted to be.
It was. That's what I had come to enjoy through my internships, through my courses at Michigan State, and I had some wonderful instructors there, and that's where I could, the opportunity to tell stories about a community is what I gravitated toward, and it didn't have to be sports, it didn't have to be any one niche, and which is because originally the concept was I'll be a sports writer,
sure,
and it obviously I didn't go that direction, but I remember a position opened up at the Daily News in the summer of 2011, and I applied for it. And Darren, who's still the managing editor today, called me up and said, "Let's meet for coffee in Rockford and talk about this." And
sure.
First thing he said when we sat down was, he goes, "Just to be fully, I'm going to disclose fully here, the job's been filled." I thought, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
why are we meeting? And he says, "I want to keep you on part time." He goes, he says, "I remember working with you in 2007. He goes, "I've seen your work with the Lansing State Journal, everything else." He goes, "A lot of video and photography work." He goes, "We want more of that at the paper." He goes, "I want to give you the opportunity to keep getting recent work, and maybe you can parlay that into a job elsewhere." And then, lucky for me, one of the reporters at the Daily News at the time, part of the reason he also wanted me to come in was that she was going on maternity leave.
Okay.
So they needed somebody who could step in and do the job immediately. So for 11, 12 weeks, fall of 2011, I came in and I was the Belding reporter, covering all things Belding. And at the conclusion of her maternity leave, she decided to not come back. Her and her husband moved to the Upper Peninsula, and so the position was open.
Well, where one door closes, another opens.
I know, yeah.
You kept all your options.
Yeah, and there was no guarantee they'd want to hire me, but in the end, it was the same time that. At the time, Phil Tower was the GM at the Daily News, and he had told me, "Yeah, we love you, man. We'll bring you on. You're hired." And I thought, I've got that full-time job, finally. And then about 2 weeks after that, Phil announced he was leaving to go back into radio, and they were going to bring Julie Stafford back from Colorado to be the new publisher of the paper. And so I thought, well, what does that mean for me? Because I was just told I have a job, and now I'm not sure if I do. And,
welcome to the world of work.
Right. And thankfully, Julie came on, and she's like, "Oh, geez, yeah, no question. Yes, the job's yours." And she and I actually both had the same start date of January 2nd, 2012 as our official starting. I had been working full-time on a part-time basis type of thing, but that was when I was officially part of, the Stafford, family as far as the newspaper is concerned, and was hired in. So that was a bit of a journey to get to the job I'm at today.
So what year was that?
That was,
you just said it.
Yep, January 2012.
So 2012, Cory Smith is now back in Greenville.
Yeah, so I actually got an apartment in Belding because my philosophy was, when I started covering Belding, one of the first things a Belding council member said to me after the meeting ended, when I went up to ask a follow-up question, he says, "How's this going to look in tomorrow's paper?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I'm curious to see how you're going to spin this, basically." And I thought, it's going to look exactly like it occurred. I said, "I don't know what you're trying to imply, but from my perspective, it's going to reflect what happened." Mm-hmm. And from that moment, I was, I made it my mission point to be as accurate as I could, to not embellish, and just to portray the event as it happened.
Oh, and it's not your opinion?
Right, yeah,
I say that with a smile, but,
unless I'm writing an editorial, no.
Right,
but that's the different hats that you wear.
We would like to thank our sponsor, M1063, WGLM, FM, your locally owned and operated radio station, playing the widest variety of music to to keep you moving with local news, sports, and weather. Visit m1063.com. Be More Media helps businesses be seen, be heard, and be more profitable. Be More Media helps small businesses get seen on Google and found through digital marketing and print marketing strategies. Visit them at bemoremedia.com. West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions is your local source for managed IT, websites design and hosting, digital marketing, and more. Check them out at wmtds.com. Check out Busy Bees Embroidery and Vinyl Signs, your one-stop shop for your embroidery and screen printing needs. Located south of Stanton, go to cvsdbusybees.com.
So speaking of the different hats that you wear, you've mentioned writer, photographer, videographer. Media has changed from that point, even now probably more so.
Yes.
That when you're going out for social content. You're going out for, okay, we have a daily paper. We need content on the pages, but we also need data. I mean, so, back in 2012, there was social media, but I think that's evolved. So, you now can do multiple things. That's got to be kind of fun.
It's fun. It can also be a little overwhelming at times because there's a lot to keep track of. And we've scaled back a bit of it depending on how algorithms kick in and whether or not we're seeing a return on investment with, social media. There were times where, there are some publications out there that will have requirements on how many times you have to tweet in a day or how many times you have to, you name it. Thankfully, we've never had anything quite that strict. We still try to put certain parameters on, make sure we're updating our daily news Facebook page X amount of times a day, etc. Right. I try to use my own personal Facebook page as a medium to get people interested. I'll post a gallery of photos, encouraging people to in turn then go to the website, view the full story.
Kind of Paul Harvey for the rest of the story.
Yeah, there you go. Because we do have a paywall. You do have to subscribe to read our stories. People will complain about that, and I'll tell them the same thing. Do you watch Netflix for free? Do you go to the movies for free?
Right.
We are another small business in Greenville, and we have to make a profit to survive, and we have to, have money coming in order to pay people such as myself. I wish I could work for free. Definitely not in that position. So,
but you say work for free, but in one sense, you're doing what you enjoy. And,
100%.
And I know that in life, there's a lot of people out there working that are not happy.
True.
So I know for myself, I can tell talking to you, it's a passion that you enjoy. And oh, by the way, they're paying me to do it.
Yes, that's true.
So you've done a lot.
Yeah.
Lansing, when you were there, much bigger city.
Yes.
Greenville, much smaller city. You've been here for a while, 2012.
13 years almost now.
There's a different style of reporting, possibly between the two.
Absolutely.
Is there?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
In Lansing, being a much larger community and more reporters on staff, you're getting assigned to any part of a much larger coverage area. We do cover all of Montcalm and a majority of Ionia County at the Daily News. My beat's primarily Greenville now in the greater Greenville area.
Which you mentioned, that's also part of Kent County because of where the school district.
Exactly.
So and that's just the way it works.
It is, but with Lansing, it is such a larger population base. It is a little more difficult to establish kind of a connection with the community, and that's where my editor will tell at the Daily News we are a community newspaper. We place that focus on the community, and when it comes to, yes, we're going to report on the tragic events as well, but we're going to do that knowing who our audience is and why they read the paper. We're going to use some discretion when reporting on certain subjects. We're not going to flaunt a photo that a devastating photo of a scene. It's still newsworthy. It's still important, but it's not going to be blown up across the page on the front.
Well, I give you credit because my path had an opportunity to do more because I was more on the video side. covering those kind of stories for a TV station, and I opted not to. I could not, and I give you kudos because it would be hard for me to be out at a tragic event, whether a fire, accident, whatever. Yeah. But you're there to tell the facts.
I flip a switch. Every time I go out there.
And that to me, I couldn't do.
Yeah, it's and that's been tough. I mean, I've been on many fatal scenes. I've seen things, and not nearly as much as what first responders see. I'm never even going to put myself in the same realm as them, but still, I don't have the training that they do either. And so when I go on a scene and I see that, it is tough. And then I'm using judgment in the moment. And I've been on scene with other reporters who have broken down depending on the situation. It is hard to see that sometimes, especially when you are back in like your hometown community and it could easily be someone you know. And you just have to tell yourself in the moment it's not, and you have a job to do, and there's information that needs to be relayed to the public that you need to acquire through proper sources.
But do it with a little bit of integrity.
Yes,
or maybe a lot.
Absolutely,
of
with integrity. Yeah. No, you're never going to see me go. I am seldom the first one who goes to a scene, and I'm the first one that's got the photo and the information out there, because I'm waiting. I could arrive at a scene and post a photo right away and say, "Police, there's a large police presence at." Wherever I'm at. I tend to wait and try to make sure I can speak to at least one officer or any personnel at the scene to say, what exactly do we have here? How serious is this?
Just the facts.
Yes, please let me know. Like, is this something that, is truly tragic? Is this something, is everyone okay? And that allows me to then provide that update with the proper context. So it's a balancing act for sure, because am I sacrificing potential clicks on our website by not getting something up quick enough? Potentially. I mean, where we're at right now, we don't tend to get as much coverage as, the TV stations will come out when there is something big, and they also come and do some fun feature stories from time to time, but primarily it's me who's out there, and there's not any competition, other than maybe a resident who's going to post something to a social media page.
Right.
Yeah.
But it comes down to community.
Yeah.
All right. We just went on the dark side.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, because you have to, as you said, flip a switch, there's probably a lot more good.
There's much more good.
So going back in your career, okay, I know that pull the cobwebs out in there. Yeah, let's have a little fun with this.
Yeah.
Is there one story, one event, one thing that, that just sticks out to you that you're going, I'm glad I'm doing this, or this was funny, or this was memorable? What is that in your career so far in 2024?
Sure. It is tough, because I write right now on average probably between 350 to 400 stories a year. So that's, we go back 13 years of that. Now I'm writing more now than I did previously. So to pick one, this isn't necessarily, it's not like a fluff piece or anything like that, right. But this one sticks out because it was a piece that won a first place award with the Michigan Press Association. I think it also did with the Associated Press for our circulation size. It was a breaking news story. It was not tragic, so I'll lead with that. We're not going down a dark road here, but it was a house fire in Greenville. And, when I'm approaching a structure fire like that, I can go one of two ways. I can be kind of just straight to the facts, and I can talk to whoever the incident commander was. What time did you get here? What did it take to put it out? Just the very who, what, where, when, why. Yep. And then I can leave the scene. I get a couple of photos, leave the scene, and I have a very basic story. I've done that plenty of times. Or I can dive deeper. And this is one of those instances early on in my career, and I dove deeper because I got on the scene of this fire, and it was still an active fire, and there was family members still scrambling outside the house. And I end up approaching the family. I'm not trying to be insensitive. And I say, I'm Cory Smith with the Daily News. Is everybody okay? I've already talked to, whoever was incident commander at the scene, the person from Greenville Public Safety who's in charge of that scene. And they've told me everyone's out. Everyone's fine. So I already know that. But I'm going to reassure that with the family. I really want to make sure everyone's all right. And they tell me, I said, who was home at the time? And they said, well, it was the kids, the ages probably like 5 to mid-teens that were home in the basement as a sleepover. Mm-hmm. And I come to find that one of the teenagers not he had gone back in the house multiple times because the kids were sleeping.
Oh.
Downstairs. There's an active fire. They've called 911, but the fire department's on its way. But he went back in that house and, grabbed cousins, sisters. I don't remember the exact relation, but got them out, carried them out. And the kid was maybe 13, 14 years old. Mm-hmm. And I said, can I talk to him? And so I interview him. I interview the parents. I have all the permission. I talk to the public safety officials to get the detailed portion of the putting out the fire. And then I wrote that story kind of like from the perspective of that individual, of the young man.
Wow.
And I remember upon attending the awards ceremony in Lansing, and I walk up there, I got my award, it felt great. And then you read the judge's comments, and it was, we felt like we were there. Basically, is what they said. This story
brought it.
Exactly. The judge reading the story felt like they were transported to the scene of that fire, living that experience that young man did. And based on seeing how well that went over, if there's the opportunity to get those stories, it's ever since then, and I think that's why that story has stuck out to me, is it's helped me continue that approach and that enthusiasm when I'm on those kind of scenes, if the opportunity presents itself, if the victims of the fire are willing to talk to me.
Well, and I would think that would be tough because you're catching people in their worst.
That's very true.
Yep.
And
you just lost your house in a tornado. How do you feel?
I know.
Please, but there you dug deeper. There's something, and that comes with, I guess, the more you do it.
And that's all about experience. It's not, I could jump in there real quick and throw a microphone in their face or now my phone and say, hey, what happened? Yeah. No, you want to establish, almost a relationship at first. And rather than it be a straight up interview, it becomes a conversation and it becomes empathetic. And, again, I do live and reside in these communities that I cover. And I in no way want to exploit anyone just for the sake of getting a story. We're not large enough paper to need to do that or anything.
Well, and I think it comes down to, the Daily News has been really good at just making it community. Mm-hmm. Instead of, we want 1 million clicks,
right,
so we're going to show that tragic.
Right.
We're going to show, we're going to exploit people.
Right.
Well, that's not what small town, and I think that's probably where you kind of found your niche.
It was, yeah, and I'm not trying to say like that's only what larger papers are or anything like that. I mean, there are dedicated journalists all over the place, but I do know that since I've been there and with the staff I've been with, we've made a concerted effort to take that approach, and again, when we get a press release from the state police or, just recently, we've had some tragic news in the past couple of days, and that was another thing. I ran out to that scene. We had a double homicide here in the Sheridan area just last week. I went from covering the 4-H.
So just so that people, because this story goes out, I'm not like but this would be in the tail end of June.
Yes. Yep.
2024.
Yep.
So I just want to, when this story goes out, they can go back if they're, and if they haven't heard about it, I'm sure. But the idea that, that's really tragic.
Yeah, it is. And the point, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about it, but the point I was trying to make was I was asked, I was just leaving the 4-H fairgrounds, and I get a phone call from one of my editors saying, can you get to Sheridan? We're just finding out about this. And I head to Sheridan. They were supposed to hold a press conference at the Village Hall. No one's there yet. So I take it upon myself to go to the scene of this alleged homicide. And, I get out of my car. I walk up down the road, just not too far, because I can see law enforcement is with family. And they're talking, they're having a meeting. And I stand and I have my Daily News attire on. They can see I'm with the media. And a family member approaches me and very kindly asks, can you not be here? Can you? Now, I could have easily said, this is a public road. It's public right away. I said, if you really want me to leave, go grab an officer and force me to move.
Okay.
That's the response I could have gave. Instead, I said, no, I completely understand. I said, I don't want to be insensitive. So sorry for your loss. Yep. And I said, I will head to, back into Sheridan. I said, as long as I know that they are still planning to do that press conference. And she says, yep, they said they'll be there in a few minutes. And I left. Now, did I miss out on an opportunity for photos and everything else? Perhaps. But the worst thing I could have done was upset that family even more, going through what they had just gone through.
Again, I'm glad that there's people like you that have respect.
No, I'm not perfect, but I try.
Well, no, I know, but the idea is that's something that I probably could have learned and done that if my career took that.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of glad that it didn't.
Sure.
Just for the fact that that's not where I and the podcast today is about a conversation, not an interrogation.
Right.
And you're kind of doing your reporting the same way.
Yeah.
It's a conversation. We're not here. You could have been the jerk.
It could have been.
And done that. But, being community paper doesn't make anybody,
and that's what that comes to. I could have an editor who could say, no, get back out there. You go get those photos. You get that comment from, and that's, I'm not saying that that's a wrong approach, but it's a different approach, but it's not the approach that we use. This is a family, a lot of people affected by this tragedy. And again, at the end of the day, we're not gone after this story ends.
Right.
We're not back in Grand Rapids covering, other communities 30 miles away from Greenville or Sheridan. I'm back out there the next day. So I need to maintain those relationships and still be able to tell the stories. And there's a way to do that without being insensitive. And I feel like for the most part I can strike that balance early on in the career, not necessily, but
it all
now,
comes
yes,
with experience.
It does.
Cory, we could talk probably for the next hour.
Sure, yeah.
We both have the ability to talk. And I find it very fascinating to learn a little bit more about you that I didn't know before coming into this particular episode. Let's turn it around to the county, local community. Mm-hmm. In Cory Smith's opinion, why should someone discover Montcalm?
As far as wanting to discover Montcalm, it's interesting. So from my perspective, I have watched. First of all, I grew up in the area,
right,
and I've watched this community go through a number of transformations from Greenville to the greater county. You watch Greenville having gone through. When the whole state suffered through the Great Recession, that was rough. Greenville and Montcalm County were hit 10 times over because it was compounded upon by the loss of Electrolux.
Oh, I remember.
And several other manufacturers that closed down or reduced. And people don't just think about one company leaving. That they might wrap their minds around that. However, I'll give you an example. When I worked at Pizza Hut in high school, almost every evening, one of our largest orders was, a stack of pizzas to Electrolux for their third shift. And, those type of things disappear. So that affects every business going down. Advertising at the Daily News goes down because every shop on Lafayette Street now is saying, well, with 4,000 people being laid off, we can't afford to, our customer base has shrank. We can't afford to advertise in the paper. So it hit countywide everywhere because, we're talking employees from all surrounding counties.
Right.
And since then, we're approaching 20 years removed from that now, and I have watched this community rebound very successfully, steadily, but successfully.
I'm kind of hearing then it's the people.
Oh, 100%. And the people and even at times, as much as some people may not think they see it, but people who are leading the communities too. Mm-hmm. For example, like Greenville very well could have gone bankrupt. It was on the cusp of it.
Oh, I remember talking with people at that time and how Montcalm Community College stepped up for training.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It become a people.
Yeah.
And again, good leadership.
Yep.
I mean that it starts with good leadership. So, in your mind, that's why someone should discover our county?
There's a resiliency here. And people probably don't see that because it's rural, because it gets lost in the shuffle of the greater Grand Rapids area. But it has survived and rebounded, and it's done so, I think, kind of quietly and under the radar. But you can really start, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years especially, you're really starting to see it prosper again.
Oh, yes.
And other people are noticing. You're seeing housing developments go up, not just in Greenville, but in all surrounding communities. You're seeing, you can look from a county government perspective, from when we were down to having no funds to now having excessive funds. An approach was taken to be fiscally responsible and put away rainy day funds. And and there are still problems. There are still many departments are undermanned. They're again, people have been very conservative in their approach. Fearing that the next business to leave could cause another Electrolux situation. So, but yet, despite that, things have really started to rebound. From my perspective, I've covered X amount of ribbon cuttings in the last 2 years in Greenville, and there are still businesses that leave, but I'm seeing things come back, especially post-pandemic, in a way that it's pretty inspiring. I've got some more stories coming up soon. I'm not going to reveal yet about, especially in downtown Greenville, of some people who are bringing in new businesses, and they didn't have to choose Greenville, but they intentionally have.
Well, in the county itself,
I know
the right place in Montcalm Alliance, doing a lot of things around not just Greenville, but the whole county, because we all prosper.
Oh, absolutely.
We all prosper. So if Howard City's prospering, it filters. If Carson City is prospering, it filters.
It does.
Even the little, Sheridans and the Vesterbergs, Edmores, it's a county full of small communities that actually help.
Yes, and as a county, I can't recall the specific study, so don't quote me on this. I hate saying that, but as of the last, not the 2020 census, but as of the last kind of preliminary census data for 2023-ish, Montcalm County has grown within a 1 or 2 year span at a rate it was, I can't remember the exact percentage, but as far as all 82 counties in the state, Montcalm was at the top of the list. It was interesting to see that, population-wise, it's coming back.
Right.
I mean, you are seeing things like declines in enrollments in schools. There's multiple factors for that. Birth rate's gone down. Virtual schools have become much larger and taken students away from brick and mortar buildings. But, the schools are finding their footing and starting to find a way to, maintain a status quo here and perhaps regrow again. And so it's good to see that, because it could have gone the other way easily, and it didn't. So, and again, that's why I say I think that resiliency, that blend of, it is a very rural county. Farming and agriculture are huge. Again, you do something like I did, where I spent 7 straight days at the Montcalm County Fair, and working and covering and telling stories about what's happening there. And I can't talk enough about how much I've grown to appreciate what our local agriculture and our young farming students and everything else, with all that they do. But that has a unique blend with the growth of a city in Greenville, or even Howard City, the village, starting to grow as well with more housing. It's finding a way to bring in people from Grand Rapids and accommodate for everybody.
Montcalm County has a lot to offer. Put on your magic. You look in your crystal ball.
Sure.
I know that you do photography. People can hire you to do events or weddings, whatever.
Sure.
Seniors.
Yep.
So you're not only with the Daily News. That's your main job.
Yep.
But you're also available for people that need photography work.
Yeah.
But in the next 5 years, where do you think your vision for the future is? If you had any control at all over it, where do you see Cory in 5 years?
For me personally, oh my gosh, in a perfect world, I think I'd have my own photo studio. I think I would be, doing multiple projects. That's always something I've, when I lived in Belding and I lived in a duplex, and I always thought, gosh, I'll rent out the front as a studio and I'll live in the back. That was my dream at the time. It hasn't come to fruition, and that's okay, because I still have my job at the Daily News, and I love that job. And I see myself, barring any significant changes, I think I'll be doing that still. Yeah. Still telling stories. I still enjoy it. I see so much happening locally as far as the growth and everything else, that I think there are far more stories that still need to be told.
Right.
And if things can continue to go well, and I can find maybe a little more free time, I can pursue some more of those personal endeavors, because you tackle a wedding and trying to balance that with working 40 plus hours a week, writing stories and everything else. It's not easy.
Weddings are not easy.
No,
They are. You only got, it's like the news. You only got one chance.
Yeah.
You only got one chance
Yep.
to do it. Cory, thank you so much for taking the time
I'm
today.
more than happy to.
Maybe we'll get you in another year or so, and we can do a little catch up more so about what's happening around the area. It's these resources is kind of why I like discovering Montcalm, and that's the purpose. So if you out there, you're hearing this, Cory, how can somebody get in? You said something earlier about Facebook. What's your tag on Facebook? How can somebody follow you personally?
Sure. I mean, the easiest way is if you pick up a copy of the paper and I have an article, my email, my professional work email is attached right there to the article.
Right.
That is number one way to get a hold of me. I mean, people can send me a message via Facebook. It's just Cory. I think it's probably facebook.com/Cory F. Smith. But Cory Smith, my profile picture is me with a Daily News hat on.
Yep.
It's not hard to find me. I would say right there's the way to go. I'd say calling my office phone, but I'm seldom in the office.
Right.
So email is primarily the best way to get a hold of me. If anyone has a story idea or wants to share anything, then that would be the way to go.
Well, thank you again. And for those that are watching, listening, discovermontcalmpodcast.com has all the episodes there. Grab the RSS feed, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can catch up on all of these. Or if you've got an idea, like Cory, you got a story, send it to him, send it to me. Come on. It's Montcalm County. We're here, and I'm out looking for a conversation, not an interrogation. I want to get to know the people behind the sign. Mm-hmm. I want to dive more into the agricultural side. But it's kind of nice that we kind of bounce back and forth where we're not really doing the same thing every day. So on that note, remember to buy and shop locally.
The Discover Montcalm podcast is produced by content creator Dwayne Weed, celebrating 40 years at DW Video and Multimedia LLC at dwvideo.com or call 231-250-9624. Connect and follow the Discover Montcalm podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Check out all our episodes at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. We look forward to featuring your business, community, nonprofit, events, and more. Contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624, 231-250-9624. Thank you for tuning in and following the Discover Montcalm podcast.